Okay. It is 5:35. I'd like to call to order the Grayson County Board of Supervisors budget work session. Of course, it's by teleconference. Mr. Smith, are you there? Can you do the invocation for the pledge of allegiance, please?
Be glad to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Father, thank you for this day that you've been so graciously gave us to live, work here in the county. Thank you for your blessings upon the county. We pray that you will continue to be with our people and be with the case that we have now in Grayson County, whomever that might be, their family, and just continue to watch over all of us as we strive to do the county's business. Be with our board tonight as we work through this budget meeting. What you do for us, we'll praise your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Appreciate that, Mr. Trying to dig us to the night. If I can get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Supervisor Hayes.
Second. A motion second, all in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, hope everyone is healthy, so we'll get right in budget session. Mr. Hopefully you want to start us off.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Belton. I wanted to start off by saying how pleased we've been with the continuing distancing procedures, social distancing procedures that the people of Grayson County have been practicing, and all the hard work that people have done to work together, volunteers and all the different agencies that have come together in a coordinated manner to try to stave off not the budget, to try to stave off the coronavirus. And so far we've been, we've all worked together to keep it down to a very low number. We hope it'll stay that way, and we need people to just continue to practice good social distancing procedures and don't let up right now. This is the time when it's the most dangerous. So thank you all for doing that. As we talked about in our last budget meeting, we know that we're projected to have about a $410,000 loss in this fiscal year due to the effect of the coronavirus. The projection for next year is a little bit over $1 million. So our plan was to try to figure out if we could create a contingency fund of about $1.4 million to prepare for the worst and plan for the best. And so what we did was we went to each of our departments and agencies, and very proud to let you know that they all stepped forward. Some put more in than others. We worked as hard as we could to try to cut as much as possible and to put into this contingency fund to enable us to have that contingency fund safely financed to a level that we feel comfortable going into the next fiscal year. So far, we've been able to place about $1 million, actually $1.2 million into our contingency fund, and this is an updated number from the last 24 hours or so. So it looks like we're still about a little over $200,000 short on what our goal is. We'll continue to bang away at that and hope we'll find a means to make that happen. We're very close to hiring a grants person that we talked about in our last discussion, and we're hoping that person can help us seek out funds that are available through the local, state, and federal governments. We need to hop on those as quickly as we possibly can, and we think we've got a person lined up that can help us tremendously to do that. We cannot rely on the state and federal government to offset our losses. We have to take care of our losses on our own, and we need to stand tall and make sure that we've done everything we can do, again, to plan for the worst and hope for the best. One of the things that we've done that we wanted to share with the board is we have, as a part of the whole spirit of trying to control costs and with our hiring freeze and with all that is going on, we did not think this was the right time to move forward with the hiring of 2 ALS employees right now, and one in the western part of the county and one in the eastern part. It's not that we're against the idea. We just think this is not the right time for us to be doing that. We need to be focused on 2 things when it comes to EMS. We need to focus right now on short-term planning. How do we make sure our fire and rescue agencies are as healthy as they can possibly be, given the impact that is hitting us from the coronavirus? And we need to concentrate on that right now, on the basics. We also need to, at the same time, be diving into long-range plans on how we can work with the EMS committee to come up with strategies that will help us to prepare for the immediate future and for the long-term future. So by taking those 2 positions out, that saved approximately $82,000 additional dollars in the budget. One of the other things that we're going to do and that we think has tremendous promise is Supervisor Fant had gone through and worked on an extensive study of our debt and current interest rates, and put together a plan that warrants a tremendous amount of attention that could potentially lead to us refinancing our debt and taking care of several other things. It's a multifaceted approach to trying to utilize the low interest rates that exist today in a manner that will help the county to prepare for the long-term future. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to be hiring a financial consultant to come in and work with us and take a look at that plan and add to it, subtract from it, but help guide us through to make sure that the assumptions that Supervisor Fant put together and that we've discussed are sound and will lead to considerable savings for the county for many years to come. There's a potential that it could be in at least a couple $100,000 range of savings each year. So we feel that is really going to be something worthwhile for us to dive into. Something else that I wanted to thank Supervisor Revels for is his in-depth study of the school system and school financing, and I'm sure that we'll be discussing some of that tonight as we discuss what we need to do regarding the financing of the above LRE for the school for this next fiscal year. And I wanted to thank him for all the hard work that he's put into this, and see what we can, in our discussion, I think you'll see a lot of interesting statistics that we need to consider. So having said that, Supervisor Belton, I would like to just open up the floor to any questions that any of the board members may have on the budget, and we will do our best to answer them.
Okay. Who wants to start?
Bill, this is Tom. Tell me what the impact was on our entities like United Way and others that we provide some funding for in the county, as well as Mount Rogers Community Services Group. How much did we take out of the projected expenditures for those organizations?
We did not actually take anything from those organizations, Supervisor Revels. So those we kept intact.
Okay.
Ms. Plant, ready?
I'm going over my notes right now. I would defer to somebody else for a second, if we could.
Ms. Sutherland, let's start with you.
I have gone through it, and I think I have all my questions answered up to this point. So Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hash.
I think I'm pretty good. Have you had any more talks with Feeding America, and if might be able to get some additional funding for that? Because I know there's a big need. There's a lot of people that's out of work right now that are having some hard times. Sure. Mr. Smith, can you update us on that?
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Shepley. Supervisor Ash, the director of Feeding America, did reach back out to me and said that at this point, it is all they can do to just service the feeding points that they currently have in Grayson County, the 2 that we have here, and then all the others in their jurisdiction. They're having a little bit of trouble meeting the need, supply and demand. We all know what that's causing right now, and so that's why they are not able to think about adding one. Once this COVID-19 pandemic is over, they said they would be glad to have further discussions on another point of contact for feeding people in Grayson County. It would cost another about $1,000 a month is what you're looking at to have another point. So that would be another $12,000. Should we, and they're able to take another point at another feeding point at some time, and should we want to entertain that, that's what we're looking at. But as of right now, he said we can't commit to that, but be glad to talk about it later.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you checking on that, Cole.
No problem.
Hey, Bill, this is John. On the couple things on the emergency services side, I do know, and I think your approach, well, you said in your opening remarks, I think is prudent given the current situation. But the other piece that I may have missed is about, that each of those agencies, probably some more so than others, have suffered financial impact due to lack of fundraising opportunities because of the COVID-19 deal. And so is the county looking at that operational shortfall those departments are having? Is that built into this number that's in the expenditure piece, or is that still to be determined what the impact is on the both this FY and next FY on the agency?
That's a great question. I should have filled you all in at the beginning. I'm sorry about that. Our hope is that we can work with a couple members of the board and meet with you early or middle of next week and discuss all the some of the shortfalls that are occurring right now, and discuss and brainstorm about some ideas about what to do about that, with the idea that we could, by sitting together, that we can come up with something that we can bring back to the board for our next meeting that could potentially take care of the short-term situation that has occurred. It is not settled at this moment, in other words. We're just preserving the money in anticipation of further discussion with the board for this time period.
Okay.
Bill, have you received any projections of shortfall from any of the volunteer fire and rescue agencies or groups yet, or are they still working on those?
Can you share that with them, Mr. Smith?
We're aware of some agency needs. I don't know to the magnitude that we'd need to to know at this point as far as all the shortcomings, but we are aware that some are have some concern, and as you all know, the one agency that we know has come to us, but there are others that have concern too. So at this point, we would just have to sit down and Mr. Hoyle would probably be able to. He's visiting with each agency, and he'd probably be able to add to that discussion once he makes up.
Have you received anything from White Top yet, Mitch? Because I know they missed their biggest fundraiser of the year with the Maple Festival. Have you gotten any estimates from them?
No, we haven't. We just been trying to work with them on the UPC labels, and I understand that's getting to be a bigger thing than what we anticipated, but that's what we were trying to help them with at this point. That was what they were working on.
Okay.
Just a bit of information. I bet it was talking with Jolena here just recently, and surprisingly, a lot of the, I don't know if it's true for everybody, but the calls coming into the 911 center seem to be down some during this period. So hopefully their costs and stuff are not too extravagant. I don't know if Paul's around, if he could speak to that or not to the counties, but the calls coming into the center seem to be down a little bit. Mr. Smith?
Yeah. I know Brenda and I sat on the Grayson EMS board, and they are experiencing the same thing. And I think Jolena, was saying that overall, I think call volumes are down. I think people are afraid to go to the hospital and to the emergency rooms and things and all. And I know one call they had taken. They basically the person said, "I don't want to go to that hospital." So I think that's some of the concern.
Any more questions, comments?
So this is John again. Just go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, John, I was just going to say I want to applaud Bill and the staff because basically comparing this budget we're looking at tonight to last a week or so ago, you guys basically recast the entire budget, and I know how difficult that is. And I just want to say thank you for the effort. I know y'all been putting in a lot of hours.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Ravels. We appreciate that.
I echo that sentiment.
Thank you.
Thank you for noticing.
I triple it if that's possible.
Thank you.
That may be a baseball reference, which is kind of a sore point with me right now, but
Thank you.
But I think if I understood what you said in the opening, as the projection from NACO and the other organizations, I don't know if VACO did the same analysis, and I don't know if Pete and Larry have done, but if the concern is 1.4 and you're at 1.2 on the contingency fund, you're still striving for that 1.4 because is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We're still looking at every expenditure to see where we can cut here and there, and we're going to be pushing as far as we can for grant money. But again, grant money and the state and federal money, we're not relying on that at all because it might not happen at all.
Yeah, I concur or support that effort. I think the hard work we do now and to achieve that 1.4 would be probably easier now than it would be if we wait and try to do it a little bit later.
Yeah.
So, okay, good on that. And, you know, I think overall, looking at the latest spreadsheets that y'all put out for the expenditures, you just went with the major line items, and that's their total that we're looking at. You've eliminated all the little in-between lines for the purpose of this reduction effort. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Lisa.
No, actually, it's just condensed. On the left-hand side of your screen, beside of A, to the left of column A, you'll see a 1, 2, 3. Do you see that? If you click on 3, that expands all of the departments back out. Just to keep, I just summarized it for you by collapsing the spreadsheet.
No, I like it. I got it.
Okay.
I can understand it. I just want it so, but if you expanded it, the detailed line items have also been reduced to equal the reduced rate or reduced request. Is that correct? So the budget in total adds up. Does that make sense what I'm asking? I mean, so all the sublines have been modified as well.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The entire spreadsheet is, you know, of course, expanded all the way out. And I've just, what you're seeing now, what I uploaded for you in the format, you can manipulate it however you'd like, in whatever department you'd like. You can open up one at a time. You can look at the whole thing at once, just by clicking on the plus button beside of the particular department line. But yes, each amount, you know, it is a working spreadsheet. It's manipulatable. If you change a number, it's going to change it throughout the spreadsheet, the entire worksheet.
Got it. Okay, that answers that.
Okay.
I think those are all my questions. Again, to echo what's already been said, but I appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Stuff ain't easy.
Bill, I had one thing. Is the 5%, is that so far, is that a voluntary, or is this going to be mandatory? How do we go about that?
How I've approached it so far is it's been voluntary. Some departments have cuts that are probably approaching 10%, and some have cuts that are in the 1 to 2% area, and the ones that were lower than 5, we really pushed them to try to figure out why that was, and for the most part, they had good explanations for why they couldn't do it. I wouldn't say that's 100% true, but it is probably 90% true.
Okay.
From my perspective, from our perspective, let me at least put it that way. Might not be from their perspective, but from ours.
Hey, Bill, this is Tom. When I look at obviously the county offices and all of our county services are a huge part of the budget, but the other huge part of the budget are the schools. Did you approach the schools about also cutting 5%, and is that reflected in this budget, and were they able to accomplish that?
I did approach the schools about cutting 5%. Superintendent Wilmore said that was not going to be possible for them to do. The cuts that he had brought back to us, I think, add up to about 1.7% or something around somewhere in that area.
Yes.
And we had let him know that we were at least looking for the 5% cut off of the above LRE from this year. So that's where that stands.
Okay, what, which way do we need to go next?
I would. It sounds to me, and you all please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think the key focus for the group that still needs to be decided would be the school system and the above LRE. If you all decide you're going to go into that in more detail,
I think we have to approve a school budget tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm aware of. So I guess we'll spend our time on the school budget tonight and make sure we get that done. And time allows, we can look at some of the other ones.
sure. Ms. Gayhart, what is the number, the above LRE, after take 95% of this year's above LRE? What is that number?
1.28.
1.28.
Bill, let me, if I may, this is Tom. Let me highlight a couple of things that my analysis showed in the numbers.
Okay, sure.
And I looked at information from the State Department of Education, the Weldon Cooper Group, a group out of Virginia Tech, and also looked at the website and the budget information provided by Carroll, Grayson, Smith, Washington, and Wythe counties. And if you look at our current funding, the state has an index they've created that supposedly gives you an idea based on tax value and property values what a county can support for the required funding, not above LRE, but the required LRE funding. Mm-hmm. And we fall in the bottom third of all the counties in the state. But when I looked at Carroll, Smith, Washington, and Wythe, and you look at what we've been providing above LRE, we're right in the middle of the pack. We provide more funding than Wythe. We provide a little less than Washington. Honestly, Smith and Carroll come below us. So out of the five, we're sort of number three. We're right in the middle. So on one hand, I have to believe that we're squeezing a lot of dollars out of a county that's not very economically robust, with a population that does not make a lot of money. And we've been putting that into the schools. And I think the results the schools have created are excellent. Okay, I can't complain about the excellent nature of the schools.
Yeah.
But I also would say that based on what they requested this year, which was $2.1 million, I believe, or roughly 2.1 above LRE, is absolutely unsustainable. Mm-hmm. If we were to do that, for example, we would be paying 27% more in tax dollars to support public education per ADM than any of the five counties. Now, if we provided level above LRE based on last year, mm-hmm. We're in the mix. We're not in the low part. We're in the higher part of the five counties in our area. And my concern is not so much with this year, although it is concerning, but I don't see our ability to sustain, even with federal and state funding, because frankly, the federal and state people keep cutting back on what they're giving. I don't see it sustainable. And so I think we have a tough decision tonight to make, but I think we have to work very hard with our professionals in the school system and our excellent school board members to think, how do we create a system that can be sustainable going forward? 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And so, to me, that's a backdrop against which we have to have tonight's discussion.
I agree, Supervisor Revels. And one of the things that Superintendent Wilmore and his agreed to today, we talked for a little while about the need to have a major strategic planning initiative that would occur with a mixture of the school and the county, and he was very supportive of that. Had some suggestions on folks that could possibly help us out on that, and it has agreed that when we get through this budget cycle, that they'd be glad to sit down with us and have that strategic planning process occur.
I guess my concern is that in the past we've had agreements to work on different things, and we've even committed funds for particular items such as, the facility study. That was supposed to be a comprehensive look at a way of getting at how do we do public education in Grayson County. And, that facility study was a good look and gave a bunch of different options. I think there was 5 or 6, A through E. All of them pretty expensive because, with the exception of two of the buildings, they're all pretty old, even though one of them has been updated recently. But yet, when the presentation in December was given to us, it was it was not really how we're going to improve the facilities based on the facility study. It was an adjustment off of that, and there wasn't a whole lot of similarity between the two. Although the recommendation in December was a much less amount than even the cheapest options that the facility study came up with. But the attempt going into that was to try to have a conversation and come up with a strategic plan of how we're doing it, because we've still got the population problem. Our overall population is trending downward, and our ADM is trending downward. And so we've still got to use Tom's, phrase, and sustainability issue going forward that will affect our financial ability. And so the commitment, I think, has got to be put in some pretty strong frame in order to make sure that we get it done. And the challenge we have is when the budget gets passed, then everybody kind of goes back to doing the normal thing, and then we end up having the same conversation 8 months from now.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just concerned about the making sure that, both boards and all the people want our kids to have the best education. We want our teachers to be paid in a fair and equitable way. But we also need to make sure that we're looking out for the financial security of the county going forward. And I just been thinking about how do we make sure that we actually get this done and develop a plan that's not about facilities, it's about education. How are we going to do education? In our case, how are we going to fund education? The school boards, how do they do education?
Yeah.
In Grayson County going forward? That's the piece that we've got to really get done, because we don't have a lot of time to figure it out.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I apologize.
I'll shut up.
No, that's okay. The way we see it, there's really 5 steps that we need to take in this in the school budgeting process. And number 1, we need to plan and prepare. Number 2, we need to set instructional priorities. Number 3, we need to pay for priorities. Number 4, we need to implement a plan. And number 5, we need to ensure sustainability. And these recommendations are coming from the Government Finance Officers Association, the local Virginia component of that organization, which has spelled out in tremendous detail how the interactions should occur between the funding organism, the county, and the school system. So those are some of the principles that we're going to be wanting to explore as we go through a strategic planning process together as partners.
So if I'm looking at Lisa, if I could, this is John again. Looking at, I think it's line 644, right? That's the school total. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so walk me through this year, the current FY, what was originally requested, and then what the recommendation is from the staff, just so I'm making sure I'm tracking the columns as
Okay. Sure. Column E is what was requested from the school. Column F was our first placeholder. And column G is the current working column.
And that combines LRE or RLE and above RLE, the column G, is that correct?
No, it doesn't. If you're looking, are you looking at the expanded spreadsheet or the collapsed one?
Collapse.
Are you just looking? Okay, collapsed, that is debt service, LRE, and additional funding all together.
Okay, so 7.59 is the total amount for debt service above LRE or above RLE and RLE.
Correct.
Lisa?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, I want to make sure I'm looking at the correct numbers. What is the required LRE for this current school year?
4.9.
For the current year?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
current year. $4,482,213.
Would you say that again?
And what is?
That's over in that 4th column, is it?
Yes,
Lisa?
it's column W, specifically line 641.
Brenda asked you to repeat that number.
The number is $4,482,213.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And what is the required projected for the coming fiscal year?
$4,917,575.
So, I mean, John, Kenneth, others, as I'd mentioned earlier, the state's cutting their funding, and they're passing more of it to us. Because even if we do nothing above LRE, our financial commitment is going up $350,000, $370,000, which again kind of reminds me of some of the other things the state does that requires us to fund it. So, I think that's an important point to put into the equation as we think about the tax dollars coming out of our coffers to support something which, yes, is very important to this county, but it's an increase in funding that basically we have no control of.
Is that, Tom, is that reduction based on reduction, loss of ADM? So the state's paying less because we have less students. Is that the gist of the reduction?
Frankly, John, the only way they came up with LRE the way it is now is they're showing property value increases in their formula that far exceed the reality of what we're experiencing in Grayson County and, for that matter, in Southwest Virginia. If I could inflate my property value as much as they have over the past 3 years, I'd sell my property and buy me another piece right here in the county. I mean, the values they put in to support the LRE request are not consistent with the reality of the real estate market, but it inflates and increases what we have to pay and are required to pay, which in turn allows them to reduce what they have to pay.
If I may, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it at 36% now, the composite index?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's correct, Lisa.
Okay, so trying to think through that, if we're, sorry, Lisa, did you have a follow-up? I didn't mean to jump in there.
No, sir.
So if the formula is flawed, forcing us to pay more of the RLE, then how do we make adjustments to get us more in line with? Is it purely through the above RLE is where we need to make the adjustments in order to get us in line?
Go ahead, Lisa.
John, I think that's a great question, and I wish there was a calculation that I had stumbled across that might give a solid answer to that question, but I didn't. I think if you want to compare what we're paying as a county to those counties around us, if we would provide level LRE above LRE funding, we're one of the poorest, but we're paying in the top 50th percentile of the 5 counties. So we're paying very close and equivalent to what Washington's paying and Wisconsin's paying, both of which have much stronger economic bases and tax bases than we have.
Right.
So certainly we have no control over LRE. I mean, that's a mandate by the state. And the only thing we do have control over is the above LRE funding that we put on the table. I mean, when I was doing this work and looking at sustainability, the thing that caught my eye, which caused me the greatest concern, is when you take federal, state, and local funding, just put it all in the pot, we are spending about $1,500 to $1,800 more per student for public education than any of the counties around us. Part of that's our size, no doubt about it. In terms of the number of students that we're trying to educate. So, I just think we have to make a decision on how much we can allocate out of our coffers to go towards the school system.
So in your math, in your work, is there, what does sustainable look like? have you been able to define that as we try to chart a course forward with the school system, given the realities of what the Weldon Cooper Center has worked on and what the school system has reported? What does sustainable funding look like?
John, when I in my review, I not only looked at what we are providing, I looked at what they're asking for.
Right.
I trust that Kelly and his team are, they're the public education professionals. I'm not, and I don't pretend to be. But I can tell you their request for $2,101,000 above LRE, if that was a true indication of what they think is needed to maintain our system and grow it, there is no way in my mind that we can support that. None whatsoever. I mean, that puts us 25% above everybody else in our little contiguous county group on supporting public education. If you look at maintaining stable LRE from this year to next year, we're still in the top 50%. So when I look at what we have to invest in child care, internet, medical care, and public education, which to me are the four legs on the stool for economic development, I think we have to balance all those things together and come up with a very realistic number. I mean, I'd put a straw poll or a straw man vote out, which would be if we basically gave them 5% less than what we gave them for the current fiscal year, but set it up so that could be clawed back with another 3% once we complete a strategic plan and both boards approve it, which puts us on a path to determining what sustainability is, John. Then I think that could be a reward system to help encourage both of us to really put our shoulders to the stone and push forward with the plan and try to do our best to determine what the true answer to your question is. But there's no way 2.1 is sustainable over time. And frankly, 1 point, whatever it is this year, we can sustain that for a couple of years, but I'm not sure we're looking at a 5-year plan that's going to look pretty to any of us financially. Yeah, I hope that makes some sense. I don't know.
No, it does. Lisa, on the 95% number, that is the number that you have in the budget that for above RLE that's been reduced. Is that reduced by 5% towards getting the helping us to get the contingency fund set? Or is that just reduced for some other reason?
That is reduced for the contingency, the 5%.
All right, so that number represents what Tom just mentioned about reducing the 95.
Correct.
And then, Tom, your suggestion of if they fulfill their commitment to do the strategic planning and chart a sustainable path for public education, not for facilities, for public education. Public education, so we're clear, in my mind, is not just the public schools. It's the public schools, it's the library, it's Wytheville Community College, it's the Gates Center, it's potentially Baywood. I mean, that's what public education looks like to me. So I think it's a broader term than just focused on the school. when we say public education in how I look at it. So related to the schools, in your proposal there, Tom, 95% right now is what's in the budget. And then if they hold true to the commitment of the strategic planning, then 3% of that would come back. Is that what you said?
No, I would, my suggestion was, John, to sweeten the pot even more than 3%, I would go back at least 5 and maybe put a few percentage points above that. Simply because, and it's an incentive in one respect. It's a way to maintain the progress we've made while we attempt to plot our course for a more sustainable system. And that's going to take some extra money on their part to make transitions and to do things. And so I think we need to have the ability to reward them because they're going to need the funds to begin the process of transition, in my opinion. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like. So I guess we all have to have confidence with each other that we're going to all put our shoulders to the wheel. We're all going to do our part because public education is important. But at the end of the day, having run a business of my own, you reach a point where you have to realize that as the environment changes, you got to modify and change the way you deliver what you're doing. And I guess that's just the reality of life over time. So I would sweeten it even a little more than the 3%, John, and certainly go back to the full 5 and maybe put a percentage point or 2 on top of that, simply because we know there's going to, if we get a plan and we start developing an action plan to implement, there are going to be some additional costs that have to be built into that.
Well, let me suggest this, and then I'll take a breather. If we go with the 95% that's currently in the budget, then that's their number for above RLE for this year. So they can plan with that and run with it as if that's the final number. But that 5% that is in the contingency fund would then be used to fund the transition and implementation of the strategic plan. So
I think that's a great idea.
So we're talking, roughly, do the math, but
150.
it's about $105,000, I think.
Yeah.
So, and that to me seems like a way forward. What do you think of that, Tom, or anybody else?
Hey, folks, just remember that we don't have beyond that money. If we go beyond the difference between that 5%, then we're actually tapping into money that we don't actually have because of the contingency at 1.2, and we're trying to get it up to 1.4. Just bear that in mind. I hate to be a naysayer, but just make sure you calculate that one in too.
That's a good point, Bill. That's a good
We
point.
can do the 5%, but beyond that would be, I think it'd be tough for us in this situation.
Be taken away from somebody else's.
We're going to have to come up with something that we can run with tonight because we're under the gun here.
Well, what I think this does is that if you do the 95%, which gets the school system in line with what other organizations within the county are having to do, that gives them a solid number to plan for the next year. Now, that 5% right now we're saying is potentially going into the contingency fund to make up for this 1.4 million revenue shortfall.
Right.
At the end of the day, we may have to use that for the revenue shortfall for this year or next year, but the plan for it is to use it to implement the strategic plan. That's what it's there for. You could almost, put it in its own separate escrow for the implementation of that, but it would count against the 1.4 potentially, and that would allow us to at least have the funds available for decision making later. Does that make sense, what I just said?
It does. It makes sense to me.
I would like a little extra clarification there. You're saying that the additional 5% would be to implement the strategic plan. However, I'm not really following where the plan itself is going to cost any actual dollars. It's going to cost some sweat equity, of course, but it's more of sitting down together at a table, rolling up our sleeves. Oh,
well,
okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Lisa, I hear you, but it's just like what the county's trying to do with grants. There's going to be consultants that we're going to need.
Okay.
Let's just say there's logistics. There may be a need to change bus routes, for example, and we need to be innovative about how we do that. Just as an example, I'm not getting into their business, but that's when it comes down to that. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good plan. I think the county administration here can get behind this. I think it's a creative way of working together to take care of today's problem with the coronavirus, but also helping us to solve a long-range strategic planning situation that needs to be addressed.
Mr. Chairman, I think under the current financial uncertainty with the coronavirus, I mean, obviously we're making projections on revenue shortfall, and if we're lucky, those revenue projections we won't meet them, we'll do better. But I have to tell you, based on what I'm reading from the CDC, from even the Department of Health in Virginia, this corona thing is not over, and the impact, which is wreaking havoc on hospitals, schools, I mean, all of our infrastructure. I personally don't think we can. I think the school should abide by the 5% reduction in above LRE to help us create a reserve, because on one hand, that may sound terrible, but on the other hand, if we end up with no money because the tax shortfall is greater than before, this might not be the end of it. But hopefully it will be, but we need to be smart to create a reserve. And so I think that's personally, I think that's a plan we got to go with. And if we can put the 5%, if revenues, Bill, do grow instead of tank, like some people say, then we'll have 5% that we can use to help the schools do the things they need to do to transition.
Yep, I agree.
I think I did the numbers wrong. I think if it's 5% of the 1.2 above RLE, that's about $60K. Is that right, Wilson?
Yes, I'm looking at 95% of the 1.35 from current year. That's where the reduction came from to find the 1.28 that you see there, and it's about 67,000. 68 if you round.
Okay.
Yeah, I got 67,822. True number.
I like that number. I like those numbers better than my number. Mr. Chairman, I think we need to. I'd be willing to make that as a recommendation for consideration. If people are ready to vote on something.
Is that a recommendation or a motion, Supervisor Evers?
Well, the chair didn't ask for a motion, and I don't want to be presumptuous, but I'd make it as a motion. If Kenneth is good with that.
I'm just sort of sitting back taking it in. One thing I'd like to throw out there, if we're asking the school to do this 5%, I think the others should too. I mean, we shouldn't throw it all on the school. And if we put this money back, hopefully we'll have this money when all this stuff is over with. But I'm sure and I know we have to take precaution and have the savings back in case this goes wrong. But I really think that we don't need, if we're going to ask the school to do this, we need to ask everybody to do this.
I guess the difference for me, Mr. Chairman, is that, the school we're already funding them on a required level that we don't control. And we also are paying on debt service, of which, nobody on this board or their board, I think, was here when that, was undertaken. So a lot of the funding for the school is untouchable. So what we're really discussing, the 95%, the 5% reduction is really just $60K off of the 1.3 above RLE funding. If you take 5% from the total budget of $7 million, I think you're more down into the 2.5% to 2% level, which is in line with what I think a lot of the departments have already done. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
John?
Ma'am.
Some of that untouchable money that you just referred to is definitely, it has restraint, very, very clear limitations on what and how they can spend it too. So it's a double there. I mean, not for us, for them.
Yeah, fair point. And I'm just looking at it from a total numbers in the number standpoint. There's that may hold true for constitutional funding we get for the state from for constitutional offices that we can't touch either.
Okay, as far as Tom, you made the motion?
Yes, I did.
And could you repeat that, please?
I'd make a motion that we establish above LRE at 5% less than the current fiscal year for fiscal year 2021, and that we put the 5% reduction in a reserve account bill or whatever, Lisa, we would technically do, so that the funds could be available for plan implementation after we complete the strategic planning if needed.
Okay. If everybody understands that motion, do I hear a second?
I understand it, and I second it.
All right. I guess all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Okay. Hopefully we can work this thing out and this will be over with and worries will be over. But motion carried. Next, Mr. Shepley.
Great, that's great. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Just for clarification, I want to just repeat for the record, school LRE funding, $4,917,575. School debt service, $1,383,069. And additional funding above LRE, $1,289,378, with $67,862 to be used toward strategic plan implementation.
This is John. The only thing I'd add to that would be it is for the primarily for the strategic planning, but it's also is part of the contingency planning for the crisis we're in. You know, for the contingency fund.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's what I look at it is, you know, making sure we get through this crisis.
Yep.
I put that in the motion, that if it's available, if needed, and if we make it through the crisis.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted that to make sure my numbers matched everyone else's.
And Mr. Chairman, I got a suggestion. I don't know. Well, let me ask Bill. What's the next thing? I've just got a suggestion as it relates to the overall budget.
Completely. That is the primary thing that we wanted to focus on in our discussion is the school budget. So certainly open to any suggestions.
My suggestion is that, you know, because of the circumstances, I think we need to do a quarterly budget meeting for this next FY, so we can look. I know we review the expenditures and stuff and look at the budget each month, but I think it might be helpful to do a quarterly get together and go through the budget and then make some potential changes to the budget after the first quarter based on what we're seeing on revenues and expenditures. I don't know that we've done that necessarily routinely in the past, but I think it might be worth considering. I throw it out there for discussion.
Supervisor Fant, we agree with you. The staff here agrees with you completely. In fact, quarterly budgets have been widely recommended by VACO and NACO in order to deal with this crisis. So we think that's a great idea.
Additionally, you do have the option of, instead of an annual appropriation across the board for most of the departments, you can do quarterly appropriations just like you do for the school system and the library, or monthly appropriation. And monthly is not a bad idea, at least for the first 6 months. Might not be a well-received idea, but it's not a bad idea.
Quarterly would give us a chance to still deal with the crisis.
I have a question, and I would like. Hello, can you hear me?
Lisa?
Hello.
If we were to say do quarterly, but as we get more information, over the next month or two, is there anything that would prevent us from going from quarterly back to monthly if we felt there was a need?
No.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Tom.
I think quarterly should be fine-tuned enough because you and I both know trends take a few months to really kick in. So I'd suggest we do that quarterly.
Yeah. Yeah, we agree.
This is definitely a recommendation from VACO.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, Ms. Sutherland. We're hearing that across the board, to be careful with those annual appropriations, especially for the upcoming fiscal year.
If I was to tell you one word that I've heard over and over again in what they're recommending to counties and budget planning, it's flexibility. Flexibility is going to be the key to getting through this in the best fiscal manner.
Superintendent Kelly Wilmore must be listening in. He said he'd be glad to work with us, but they can't do monthly. There's too many bills and payments up front.
Yeah, I've gotten an email too.
You just don't want to sign all those checks every month.
I think quarterly is more practical. Yeah, I think quarterly is more practical, Bill.
Yeah.
And I do understand the challenge. The county has those same upfront payments, especially that first quarter of the fiscal year. But I am planning on the county part, work with our vendors, work with our suppliers, our service providers to break those payments up, at least into quarterly payments.
Yeah, I think doing quarterly across the board. I mean, we do it for the school. I think we do it for the library. It's probably also fair that we do it for the other departments, especially right now.
Yeah.
So does that need to be a motion, or that's just something we're going to do?
That can be something that we discuss later once we approve the county budget as a whole. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Good.
Okay, Mr. Shepard, what's next?
I think from our standpoint, we're ready to. I mean, we think we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish for tonight. I think it's coming off of this. We'll be looking for a couple of board members to sit down with us early next week and talk about some of the EMS, the current EMS situation, so that we can come back to the board with a recommendation that we can discuss together. But if we can get a couple of volunteers for that, not necessarily right this second, but just email me and let me know who would be willing to sit in with us, we would appreciate that. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think from our perspective, we've accomplished what we hoped to accomplish. We appreciate, all of y'all's hard work and being prepared for this discussion tonight. And it's been very valuable.
Any other comments before we close out?
I was just wondering, we need to have this strategic plan quickly as possible to work with the school board.
Will do.
Very quickly, because that's quite a bit of money to hold over heads. So let's get that on the calendar as quickly as possible.
We'll do it, Supervisor Sutherland.
Mrs. Sutherland, we do have actual bound document guides. The best practices that Mr. Shepley was referring to earlier, I have already purchased several copies of this guidebook. Again, it's best practices school budgeting. It's the Governmental Finance Officers Association. It's their how-to guide. We do have.
And do we have
support for that.
Ms. Taylor, do we have copies for all the board members and for all the school board members?
I ordered copies for each board member, each school board member, and administrative staff for each system as well.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Bill, on that though, you know, we may want to consider a facilitator, someone outside to lead through the process, because doing that, trying to do it on our own might be a bit of a challenge.
Are you talking about, Supervisor Fan, are you talking about EMS or are you talking about the school strategic planning?
I was talking about the school strategic planning.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely need an outside source to help us, and Superintendent Wilmore and I discussed some possibilities already today about, you know, who we could possibly reach out to, but we'll be working with the board to come up with some recommendations that both boards are comfortable with.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Supervisor Melton, I have one comment. It's not really related to the budget, but because I know that there's some that are following us on YouTube, and there's a lot of families having hard times. There's going to be another food giveaway at the old Elk Creek School this Thursday at 9 o'clock.
That's great.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
I have all my notes also.
Okay, appreciate it. Anyone else have anything? I really appreciate all the hard work everybody's put into this. Staff plus board. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to have been done. What is our next meeting date?
Well, the board meeting coming up, May the 14th.
Okay, so that's a no budget workshop between them.
No, I think that's it.
PSA
Okay.
meeting?
No PSA meeting scheduled at this point. I don't see one coming up.
Okay, sounds good. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move in a second for sure. So thank
I got
everyone.
Brenda as a motion. Who was the second?
Supervisor Hash.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Everybody be safe, careful, wash your hands, stay away from everybody.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.